here we go. Doing it live today. As you saw, lightning talks. Let me quickly start with the conference. We will be hybrid this year. We have on-site attendees have access to the online part. The main track will be streamed to online. We will have an online track, but I also plan to have a pre-recorded track. So if you don't want to speak live or can't speak live, then that is also an option. Also, it's going to be like probably a very good option to get on to the speaking roster this year. And of course, yeah, so already said, submit until June 12th, but submit early as you can edit your submission. And when you're through the submission process, you probably want to change things, and that's a good option to submit early then. Which brings me to tonight. Tonight is lightning talks. So the goal is like 5 to 10 minutes, but if a speaker goes over time, I'm not gonna intervene. I just want people to finish their talks rather than being stopped because they're running over time. We have 9 speakers, and we probably need around 90 minutes. And that brings me to tonight's speakers. There has been a last-minute change as Andrei Alexandrescu will have to get his kids from school in about an hour. So I will put him just in front of my own talk so that we make sure that he is speaking in a time frame that he still can get to his kids and not under too much pressure there. And so you see first is Tina, then we have Inbal, Hendrik, myself, then Andrei, then myself, Clare, Chandler, Patricia, and Kate. And with that, let's get started. Let me bring Tina online.
So.
And you're ready to go.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. When you talk about giving conference talks to other people, most people say that they don't have anything to talk about. And I said the same in the past as well. And now I have given several talks already. I still consider myself a beginner speaker, but I realized that I do have something to talk about. And in this talk, I'm going to share some possible talk ideas, and I hope you will get inspired. So first, ask yourself, what do you do? What do you do at work? What is your daily job? How do you work? Which technologies are you using? Which ones are you writing or expanding? We very easily fall into the thinking that we don't do anything interesting, or that everyone already knows what we know. But that's not true. I can guarantee that you have a unique knowledge in lots of different areas, and talking about it will benefit others. The same applies to any project, like private projects you're working on or open source projects, like anything you're working on or using. Or think about which questions, problems, or challenges have you or someone in your team encountered. There's a high probability that many people have the same questions and are in need of getting them answered. So why not turn those discussions and solutions into conference talks? So next, maybe ask yourself, what do you want to learn more about? Have you ever read an article or watched a conference talk, but you wanted to learn more about the subject? Giving a talk is the perfect opportunity for you to get the topic, to get to know the topic in depth. You will always learn a lot in the process of writing a talk, way more than just using some library feature. Or maybe you learned about some interesting concept or language feature, and you want to figure out how you can use it in your code. I always love to learn about real-life examples of the new features. So that's why I personally also like to give talks that are more practice-oriented. But don't think you need to be cutting edge to be giving a talk. The basics are very underrepresented at conferences, and most people don't use the new standards right away anyways. So consider talking about the basics. And as I said, not everyone has this knowledge, and many people will benefit from it. And tell us what excites you. Do you like the theory over examples? Then do a talk about theory. Do you like examples and live coding more than theory? Then do that. Do you want a discussion rather than a 1 hour monologue? That's also fine. A talk you're excited about will always be better than a talk that you don't care about. And there is an audience for every style of talk. Also, you can play around with those elements and find out what presentation style you prefer. It doesn't have to be perfect in the beginning. In fact, you shouldn't strive for perfection at all. Just give it your best and everything will be fine. And this, I think, is very important. Talk about your ideas. I can't tell you how often I had an idea and I talked myself out of it. It's only once I started talking about my ideas that I got some great feedback and encouragement. Others might also have a different viewpoint you can include in your talk, or they might know if there's already something similar out there. So talk about your ideas and gather some feedback and don't talk yourself out of it. And lastly, relax. Speaking might look intimidating and speakers might look like they know everything, but they are just normal people like you and me. Speaking is a skill and you learn and improve by doing it. So here's a summary of everything I just said. I hope you find something useful in it, and you can take a screenshot here at this point if you want to. So just to summarize, what are you working on? Which libraries are you using or writing? Which open source projects are you using or working on? Which questions, problems, or challenges have you or someone in your team encountered? Consider talking about the basics. Don't assume everyone knows what you know. Talk about the things that you are excited about. Take your time to find your presentation style. Talk about your ideas and get some feedback. And in the end, relax and have fun. So all I can say is you can do it, try it out, you might like it, and I'm looking forward to see a lot of new speakers. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Tina. And next is Inbal Levi. Let's quickly bring her online.
Thank you. Thank you, Tina, for the great talk. It's actually made me feel more confident since I'm also feeling I'm relatively new in giving talks. And yes, this is always stressful and exciting and fun. So my talk is, I think, maybe the next step after you pick the topic. And this is something that I learned from my experience, which is not very broad, but still I have some of it. So I think it's very important to be able to distilling your message in the talk. So let me explain. So let's say I want to explain to you about vector, and please excuse my very simple example. So this code is actually coming from a website explaining about StudVector. But as you can see, this code is not fitting for the slide. You can't give a talk about vector, fill in the slide like that. So for example, the creation of the vector, we could basically use initialization list. The part of printing, you could use a print function and have a comment explain your intention. Here, for the pushback, you can do the same. Notice the comment again. And for the pop-up back, etc., etc. So what I'm trying to say, in short, is that visualization is very important when you try to express an idea on a presentation. Another example, let's say I want to explain the vector more deeply. I could use images. I could also show, just with a simple image, what happens when I add an element. So please excuse my very, very simple and not well designed photos, but I hope you get the idea here. So I want to talk about data visualization. Generally, in our world, people don't have a lot of time to capture a lot of complex ideas, but when they do come to your talk, that means that they're actually very anxious to learn. So I think giving them good explanation, visualized explanations would be very helpful and help them get more connected with the ideas they're trying to express. So here on the right, you can see it's a meta picture. It's a picture talks about good visualization. And this is actually coming from a very cool book called Information is Beautiful. So there's two of them as far as I know, and I would highly recommend them. I'm not connected to the author in any way, but those are really awesome books. One is called Information is Beautiful. The second is Knowledge is Beautiful. And in general, they talk about how do you express information in a visual way. So I think what I'm trying to say is create an experience for your audience. Also communicate with them. And most important, care about your audience. You want to have them enjoy your talk. So to summarize, I would say that creating a good talk will include having a good structure. Use visualization and minimization in your talk. Get some perspectives. Have other people that know this topic see your talk, give you feedback, and even just have more broad perspective of the topics that you have. Decide what are the takeaways that you want your audience to take from your talk. And of course, what Tina has said, and I think is very important, present your own views. The talk would not be great unless you put what you feel that is important and what you want to express. And also, just make sure you bring all the equipment you need. This is very important because it's never fun to find out too late. But to summarize, a good talk is about what you bring. Thank you. And of course, I just want to say, if you want to reach out, I will be happy to help with talks and presentations. Thank you.
Thank you, Inbal. That was very good, very nice. So let's see what Hendrik has to say.
Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. My name is Hendrik, and today I want to talk about doing research for talks today and also some other useful tools which can help you along the way to your presentation. So my point here is you already have a topic you want to talk about, and we already learned from Tina about how to get to a topic, and this is a complicated task on its own. But now you have your idea and you need to do some research on it to get the ideas and the stuff you want to talk about it more fleshed out. And of course, there's a lot of resources where you can look at for doing your talk. There's a lot of books, blogs, and articles on C++ out there. There's CPP reference. There's a lot of other talks and written material. And of course, you can go through all of that. And this makes totally sense to go through a lot of material. But what my takeaway here is, it is impossible to remember what is written where without note-taking and writing stuff down. And if you don't do that, you might get confused along the way. And I want to share a little bit about the system I use for that, for note-taking and knowledge management. Because usually, if you don't have a system, you have something like this desk on the right here, and this could be a picture of my desk in the past. So I like to have lots of paper lying around with stuff written on it. And since doing research means reading a lot of things and taking notes, this can happen pretty fast. But I think notes on their own have less value if they are not organized or connected. So you will never find the things you are looking for and which you need right now at the moment to, for example, work on a certain slide. And you can easily lose yourself in unorganized notes. And there are several systems for knowledge management. And today I want to talk about one of them, which is called Zettelkasten, which is a slip box. And it's a method for organizing notes. And the idea is that you have notes which are short and contain mostly a single piece of information. And the value from these notes comes from tags, like on Twitter with a hashtag, and hyperlinks between these notes. And with that, you can organize and interconnect your knowledge. And usual people have also folders, like, for example, you have literature notes where you have a short summary of a piece of literature, like a book or a chapter or a blog post, which then contains hyperlinks to notes which contain the actual knowledge from the literature. These are then the knowledge-based notes, where they contain then mostly one piece of information or knowledge, and again, hyperlinks to each other or to literature notes. And something like fleeting notes, where you have short-lived temporal notes with, like, where you can write down what you need to do or where to look for new stuff to research, and this stuff might be reworked or deleted later. And you see here on the right-hand side an analogous version of that, but we have more in the digital world. And I really like software which is called Obsidian, which is a note-taking software based on Markdown, and it supports this Zettelkasten method, but also other methods and as well. You can download it for free. It has a graph view for showing you all the links. It has templates and a lot of plugins. And maybe I just show you a little bit how that can look like. So here you might see this, for example, is a system of notes I do for the stuff from my personal stuff, which contains a lot of different stuff about Linux, programming languages, Kubernetes, and you have all these interconnections here, and you have notes with Markdown syntax where you can put up text and code and links and tags and all of that. And for me, this is a really cool system to organize knowledge. It also supports C++ code, because Markdown supports C++ code. So here I did a little example of how something could look like if you're doing research for a C++ talk. We have literature from cppreference.com, which then has links to an actual node containing the knowledge about, for example, concepts or enable if. And this is a really cool system to organize your knowledge. Yeah. And if you're interested in doing that, here are a lot of resources for the Zettelkasten method, which the first one is a YouTube video which introduced me to the system, and the others are more like if you're into reading. Yeah. And now I will talk about in like 1 or 2 minutes about other tools I like, because writing slides can be hard as well. So these are things I really, really enjoy. So I'm not an English native speaker, so I really love the title capitalization tool. So you can put up text here and it will capitalize it the right way for English. So here goes my slide. And this is, for me, a lifesaver because I don't know capitalization rules in English. And also other stuff you have for highlighting code. There's a slide code highlighter where you can get nice highlights, or with Carbon you can get images. We have some sites for getting free image resources, which is also pretty cool. And if you're doing talk, which also contains math, there are online LaTeX editors, and you can use, I will put up the slides after the event so you can have a look there for these tools. And yeah, last but not least, if you're already using Markdown for your notes, you can do also your slides in Markdown if you're interested in that, because Markdown supports syntax highlighting and equations. And one framework which I really like is called MARP. And if you want to do something like that, Visual Studio Code supports that. And you can write really nice slides in Markdown just by using Markdown with a few additions, and can get something like these things here on the right with a nice theme, a footer, a header, some syntax highlighting for C++, some math, and the typical lists you need for bringing down for your items. And yeah. And this is the end of my tool-heavy lightning talk, and I hope maybe some things of these can be useful for you for doing research and then materializing this research into some nice slides. Thank you.
Thank you, Hendrik. That's really great. I gotta look at some of those tools. But next isn't me, but Andrei. And let me bring Andrei up that we can start with this talk. Go, Andrei.
Thanks, and sorry for jumping the line a bit to you and Claire. So I just wanted to share a few things that a couple of people in this, among the other speakers have done already, and I'm very happy to be after them. In particular, like Hendrik did a great job about how to prepare a good talk. I'm going to give you advice on how to not prepare, not to insist on the slides too much, because they are only 20% of the talk. Most of your talk should be the delivery. Consider this, I haven't been at the long concert, the great rendering of Appassionata, but I have the sheet music, so I'm okay. You shouldn't be okay with just the sheet music, okay? Think your slides are your sheet music or a play script. It's the rendering that makes the difference, right? You should not go to a concert on account that you have the sheet music, okay? Or the Broadway, whatever, right? So don't forget that your slides are not the talk. I am continuously baffled by folks who say, oh, I missed your talk. Can you send me the slides? Sure, I'll send you the slides, like, approximately nothing of the value of the talk, right? So don't forget that the slides are not the essence of your talk. It's what you contribute outside the slides. So I'm going to talk a few things here. Real quick, I don't have time to motivate everything. I've said for a long time that the most difficult talks to prepare are the short talks, which is paradoxical. So on to the philosophy of tech talks. There are three levels of nirvana that I have identified. First, competence, and second, confidence, and showmanship would be the third. Each has a long ramp leading up to it, and each counts for a very big difference in your effectiveness as a speaker. The competence is the one thing that you cannot fake in any way. The rest you can. So when you work on your competence, focus on understanding your material. When we talk about confidence, focus on teaching, and showmanship, focus on doing the performance part of your talk. So the competence, you cannot buy, steal, fake, inherit. You cannot. There's no easy way to get in it, and that's what makes you be there in the pulpit or whatever on the stage. Make sure you have the competence. No competence, no talk. I'm not kidding. Very serious. If you don't have the competence, decline the invite. No matter how highly they think of you, if you don't feel you have the competence, you can't do it. Study related work. Be able to defend in a claim in a court of law every single word you say. Be able to talk to someone whose life is that topic. All right, who sleeps, eats, and showers, and everything is that one topic that you touch in passing. Okay, so you should be able to have a conversation with them. Be always one level above what you talk about. Don't forget that reputation is everything you have as a public speaker. And that's how you build it, with competence. What you teach should be only a small fraction of what you know. Never teach everything you can't teach everything you know. You teach a little what you know, and then the questions are going to take you to the other 80% of things that you know. Confidence, don't confuse it with self-esteem or arrogance. I'm sure every listener here has a good level of self-esteem and is not arrogant. So that's not about confidence. Confidence is how you relate to others. You must be convinced that you are in the right relationship with your audience, which means what you say is right, what you say is interesting, what you say is worth saying, and you're right person to stand in front of, in this case, sit, by the way, to stand in front of everybody and, talk about it. Truly believe every single goddamn word you say. Truly believe every word you say. If you don't believe it, don't say it. Okay. I noticed, by the way, there's also a matter of energy, if you wish. People tend to fade out toward the end of the talk. Make sure the second half is better than the first half. Make sure the second half is as strong, at least, as your first half. The best musical players, the best actors, the best whatever performance, they're going to give it through the end with belief. They're going to believe everything they do to the last second. So on to showmanship. Each performance must be unique. You shouldn't have one talk that you kind of, I'm giving my talk on X, right? No, my memorable talk on that in Oslo was about, this stuff. And it was great because, I don't know, I fell off the stage or whatever happened, right? So make sure you get into the character. Make sure you visualize for weeks before. Mike Tyson had a word. He said, for a month before a fight, I could think of nothing but of hurting that guy, right? You shouldn't be there to hurt people, but definitely you should be thinking for a long time before the actual performance. You should be thinking about it. You should visualize it. You should get into the character of doing it. By the way, I have no idea. I can't fathom how people were doing chit-chat just before this. I could think of nothing. I was drenching sweat. I had to change my shirt. I was drenching sweat for half an hour before this very 10-minute talk, which to you may be nothing, but to me is oh my God, I got to give a talk. I got to be there. Totally 100%. I got to be there, in the moment, right? So the talk must take something out of you. If you're good for anything after the talk, you're not doing it right. You should be half dead after the talk. If you're dead on the stage, then that was almost good, okay? If you're dead on the stage after it, that was almost good, almost adequate, okay? So make sure you can't do you can't do it glibly. You can say, yeah, I give my talk, and then I kind of, I don't know, I scratch my button, and then I was fine, and no, nothing happened. No, I gave my talk, and then I was dead. Then I was I lied on the floor and had no idea what was going on for 2 days after, okay? Strategy. Make sure you prepare material. Again, competence. Define a small number of messages. Strong. Take away everything that doesn't support the point. Don't use those fancy slide transition effects, animations, all that crap. That's not good for anybody. Those transitions that take 1 second each. How fun is it going to be when somebody tells you to go 50 slides before the current slide, right? Oh, well, let's wait for 50 seconds until each transition does its job, right? The rule of 3. Everything should be in 3s. 3 parts in a talk, 3 subsections in a part, 3 examples for a principle, 3 bullets on a slide, that kind of stuff. This slide actually, doesn't do that, but that's fine. Get comfortable. Comfort is everything. So people like to be comfortable, and comfort and discomfort transmit anything, nothing else in talk. So make sure you're comfortable and fake it. Pretend you're comfortable and you're gonna be comfortable. I know it's weird, but it's just what happens. There's any number of pop science articles about that kind of stuff. Display, that's why I'm emphasizing, display ultimate comfort with every situation. Not only in talk, but that's actually a good tip for every. And when I say display, and that's why it's emphasized, I mean fake it. Do you think I'm comfortable right now? I hate it. I would die right now instead of being here, okay? But I gotta display that I'm comfortable and just yeah, I can just talk about stuff, no problem. People are empathetic. Newsflash, right? This is not high school. People don't like to feel shame, bad, the speakers feel I'm gonna be ashamed for saying the wrong things and stuff. But your audience doesn't like to shame you. This is not a situation one of those weird movie situations. No, people want to feel good and they want you to feel good. So then you start with a good position. You're in a position of authority. You're there on the screen. You have the microphone, right? You have the microphone. You have everything it takes. You have good karma. You have credit. You have an attitude from everybody that they want you to succeed, essentially. So don't forget that the situation when you start the talk is rigged in your favor. It works for you. The opening is disproportionately important. People decide within 30 seconds if they like someone, if they want to develop a relationship with them, if they want to do anything that's unspeakable with them, anything is within 30 seconds, okay? You should have a clear notion of that. There's many experiments about that. People can predict, students predicted their final grade after 30 seconds of video with the professor, okay? So they could predict with 80% accuracy within 30 seconds. You can't have 2 times 30 seconds. First 30 seconds is everything that matters. So establish contact immediately. Ask people, don't introduce yourself. Your name is on the slide. Don't say, oh, hi, I'm John Doe. No, you're not John Doe. I don't care, right? Establish contact. Ask people a question, tell them a story, say a joke, do something that is going to establish some sort of a human contact with your audience. Make people feel like oh my God, I got to be there because otherwise I'm going to miss all of this great stuff that's happening in this talk, right? I hate it when people close with, oh, and I guess that was it. And kind of just stop there and kind of, there's a kind of perdendosi, as they say in Italian, it's like, this kind of the fade out, right? It's like, oh yeah. No, you got to close for applause. Like, make sure you practice your closing. And when you close, everybody and their cat is going to know, oh, there's the closing. So I'm supposed to give applause and all that great things that people do when the talk is done. So practice it. Make sure you are there and you're doing your closing properly. Any post-close message can wait. You don't end. Your closing is not, I'll be around for a few more minutes. That's post-closing. Your closing is, thank you very much, right? And now go shoot me, okay, or do something. That's your closing. Your closing is not, oh, and I guess that's it, and I'll be around. And by the way, my name was John Doe, right? No, don't do that ever. A few tactical issues. Again, I don't have much time to explain things in detail, but please take my word for it. Attire. I'm the last person to give you advice on how to dress yourself. Make sure you're first of all, like Kate gave me that great tip. Make sure your attire has pockets if needed. If you need to have like a microphone and that kind of stuff on you, you gotta have pockets so you can put the lavalier and that kind of installation in your pocket. So beyond that, make sure that you're congruent with your attire. Your message is congruent with your attire. No matter how you dress, it's going to send some sort of a message. If you don't want a message, dress like Bill Gates. Because nobody ever remembers how Bill Gates was dressed. Like not one person in the world, I don't remember. If you shoot me right now, if you tell me your life depends on remembering the color of Bill Gates' sweater, in the last talk you saw, or any talk you saw, you would have to kill me because I have no idea. I have no idea. Bill Gates is like a floating head. That's all I remember. It's a floating head. He has absolutely no clothing, and that's because he wears this grandpa. There's a special factory that makes these grandpa sweaters of Bill Gates that convey absolutely no message. So if you have no message to send, dress like Bill Gates. If you think your old dirty T-shirt with a crappy joke on it and with that kind of stuff like dirty and kind of with a bad color and that kind of stuff, that if you think that's I don't care about, you don't, it means I actually care about showing you that I don't want to dress nicely for you. That's what the message really is, right? So don't be way too casual, because that's not I'm so casual. It's like actually I'm a slob, right? And don't be a corporate drone with the tightest shirt and the most fitted suit ever invented, because then you're gonna send the wrong message on the other side of the spectrum, right? Make sure you handle your audience. Again, you must assume that at least one person in the audience is gonna have dedicated their life on the one thing that you have to a little knowledge about, right? Make sure you're gonna be able to make a conversation with contact with that person, validate, befriend, inspire them. Avoid a few people just hogging the entire interaction. Unfortunately, it does happen. You can never demean a person. That's the worst thing any speaker can do. Just make sure you address any questions they have extra, in excess of what's expected. Take it offline with them. Don't forget you're in a position of authority. Don't exercise it. It's just very easy to implicitly just acknowledge it and use it. Always scan for raised hands. I hate it when somebody speaks for an hour and they look at the slides and I have my hand in the back of the room for like half an hour straight. I'm like that guy who's like, and my hand is going to get tired and stuff. Don't do that. Always scan for raised hands. Spray the audience with gaze. Never say good question. Say thanks for the question. Don't put judgment on the goddamn question, okay? Just say thank you for asking. That it's the question. It's very much to be appreciated that somebody asked the question. Don't judge the question. Oh, that was, maybe I'll say, oh, that was a crappy question. No, I didn't like that question. No, that's a terrible question. Never ask that anymore. You're stupid. Okay, don't do that. Okay, always repeat the question for good form. Always, and for many reasons. It's not only for the camera or whatever, and for the microphone, that kind of stuff. Even if they have a microphone, it's good to repeat the question in your own words, so there's a clear contact between people. Mirroring is a thing, very important in psychology. So when you repeat the question with your words back to them, there's going to be a very good acknowledgement of your understanding of that question. Always reply. Don't reply to the person. Don't look them in the eye and kind of like an obsessed guy with an axe. Don't look at the guy and say, "Oh yeah, I'm going to answer you right now." Right? No, don't do that. Reply to look at the other half of the audience. Look at the entire audience and reply the question. Respond. So everyone at the end of your talk, everybody in the audience must feel that they have had an opportunity to shine, to say something smart, to understand something great, to ask a question, to make a point, to kind of be in the moment. Everybody must have had the opportunity. Nobody should be just in their seat and say, you know what, I'm bored to death. I'd rather be anywhere else. I'd rather have my root canal done right now instead of being in this talk. Your posture. It's amazing how many people just slouch. Like they slouch more than, like, if you have a normal conversation, you're just going to stand straight. But when you're talking, the pressure of the tension of the moment is so huge on it that people tend to slouch. Stand straight, speak loudly with dynamics. My wife always says, like when I'm giving a talk like from home, she says, "You're yelling." Yes, that's how I am. I'm sorry, I can't do it. And make sure you speak loudly, dynamics, clearly, use your enunciation, whatever. My accent is my worst part of me, so don't imitate my accent at all, right? So never talk to the slides. Talk to the audience. Don't speak to the slides. Slides are never gonna reciprocate, okay? It's all your audience. Look at it. Don't make me hear your drinking of the water. Please don't make me hear any of those gulps and everything. No, I don't want to hear that, right? Drink while being asked a question. Don't take a pause to drink, and make sure it's not audible in the microphone. Record your rehearsals. You will be amazed at how much stuff is going on. You'll be amazed that when you thought you're giving a talk that was so engaging, so awesome, you're like a boring, like drone there, just, yeah, whatever. So people think usually the self-perception of energy they give is a lot more than the energy they actually convey. So if I have one tip for you, and the one thing that you should remember is put more energy in your talks. Put more energy in your talks. Give more of you what you have. Nobody is going to enjoy a talk that is given half-hearted. Everybody is going to be, at least is going to be sympathetic, even if they don't like you as a person, because that's impossible to be liked by everybody. Even if they have something with the material, they don't enjoy the material. Even, in any circumstance, people are going to appreciate that the speaker gave everything they got and died on that stage, right? Time management. This brings me to so otherwise speakers make this mistake of not managing their time very properly, and that's a big social contract. Make sure you finish on time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrei. And let me, I'm next. That was very good. So there are my slides. All right, so I'm speaking about presenting code, and let's go. So this lightning talk has been inspired by the keynote from Scott Myers, which he did at Mini C++ 2014, which was about preparing material for the modern age, and also kind of, seeing lots of talks being given at various conferences in various settings. So let's talk a bit about, how to present code, how to think about things. But first, I want to point out, where's your audience today? And this has been true like prior to the pandemic, that a lot of your audience will be in the recording. And have in mind that the slides are recorded separately. But also, of course, pay attention, as Andrei just said, to the audience in the room. Even if a lot of people will just be sitting there and reading email, doing social media, following your talk along, but the other half will listen and be, engaging with you for questions. And that's, if you're presenting on site, this audience will be the source of the questions about your talk, right? So you better be engaging to them. But actually, I'm talking about presenting code. So there are various forms of how you can put code on slides. Text is probably one of the best. Screenshots, some people do a live demo, so you're just streaming your editor. And also, like the common programs used for slides are not like coming with a slide for code. There's no template for it. You can just, there's various ways to do it. And I would like to just go quickly through them. First, please remember that fonts matter. They bring readability, and for code, make sure it's a monospace font. And of course, also as your slides will go through a projection and some encoding things nowadays, probably the code for your font should not be too thin. Highlighting less is, in my opinion, better. And some people do like bold keywords, and other people do other things. That's like, express yourself there. Feel comfortable with that. That's important. Also, colors. Your slides should have a good contrast. Stick with one theme, dark or light theme, for example. Should not be too colorful. And of course, please be aware about color blindness. Avoid, for example, red-green text. That's one of the easiest things. But also be aware that if your contrast is getting bad, then like one of the classics is like having blue text on black background or gray background that can be in a lighting on the stage where you present suddenly be a lot less readable than it was at your screen where you wrote the slides. And all of that also applies to code highlighting, right? Here's an example which I used a couple of years ago, where I just put the code into how it was, and I skipped the things which were not important with ellipses, but didn't like cut out everything which makes this, kind of showing the code which is important. And then when I talk about something in my talk, I highlight the part of the code which I'm talking about, so people know actually what I'm doing on stage. And that way I don't need to finger around with a laser pointer. Another very nice way I have seen is by Michael Cass at CPPCon. He did a way that basically most of the code is grayed out, and when he continues in his talk, more and more code, the code he's just talking about is just the next thing coming up, and then he's like, this is now what we're implementing, and talks about that. Works very well and works fantastically in this presentation, and you already can kind of see what's next, and you can also like see what's in the past, what has been added to the slide prior. Very nice way to do this. And also be aware and be not afraid to ask to change the lightning if the lightning ruins your slides. Please check for that always. And you see here that there's basically the code, and then there's like comments which or things they want to say about their code, and put into little speaking boxes. That's also very nice to do, just to give people a hint what you're talking about, and that's also a great animation. but of course, that's like also the question, like, what do you do when people have a question which is about something which is not highlighted, or you want to highlight something which you didn't think about? There are, for example, ways to draw on a slide. But also there are virtual laser pointers, and laser pointers is, I think, the next thing I'm going to talk about. Laser pointers are often used. I've seen them. There are some problems with them. For starters, did you see the laser pointer? That's my which I often observe when I sit in a talk and people highlight things with laser pointers. I get confused. Okay, and of course, most importantly, is like one point I didn't add a slide for that, but please, we're online now. We're talking online. This is a new default. Think about that part of your online audience will never see laser pointer, even if like the slide is being streamed via the camera, which hopefully it is not. Also, what do you do with a double projection? As CPPCon loves double projections, and then you come to a meeting C++, and in the big room we had this setup, right? So you're never gonna be able to, or maybe you're running in the back and showing those people too with a laser pointer. So there's alternatives. There's various methods to have a virtual laser pointer, and there's various methods to do this on screen. But it's best to prior highlight the things you want to talk about. So conclusions. Laser pointers are hard to see, but also they're not recorded, and that is then missing a lot of the audience which will see your talk. Actually, most of the audience, like 10% of your audience, is in the room at best. And look into virtual laser pointers. Know your tool if you want to write or draw on slides. Highlight what you're talking about. And with code, there is something called Slide++. You don't have to show code which is like 100% compilable and has all the keywords that is needed to be in production. Focus on the code that is important for your example, for your slide. Live demos can be great, but need to be prepared, which we'll see soon. And of course, if you want to watch the keynote, that's online too. And then we should go to Clare.
Thank you very much, Jens. Thank you very much, Jens. Now, welcome to this demonstration of how to make better code samples for your programming talks. It follows on very well from Jens's talk about the importance of drawing people's attention to the right parts of your slide. A quick summary of the basics that have been talked about very well in the earlier talks today. A particular thing I do want to point out, though, is the importance of being able to export your slides as PDFs. We've already had a request from Jens to submit our slides from today's talk. So if you can do your highlighting in a way that fits well with saving as a PDF for people to read offline, then that's a bonus. I'm going to be focusing today on showing you a few techniques in PowerPoint to help with, I'm talking about highlighting details in code, but it doesn't have to be. It can be animating and drawing attention to different parts of images that you've got on the screen. But just for context, let's talk about showing code. So I believe that it's important to check that your code compiles before you paste it in. So I have here some code that I checked before that it compiles. And it'd be really nice if we could just copy it from our favorite IDE and paste it into, okay, so I'm going to switch to editing at this point now. So we're going to try the first method. We're going to paste our code in. Yeah, but we've lost all of the highlighting. That's really annoying. Well, never fear. If I undo that, PowerPoint has paste in and keep the source formatting. Well, that's not too bad. We've got the color coding, which is important for people to be able to quickly glance at your code and see context. But I want the fixed space fonts as well. Well, there's this weird trick, one weird trick, that if you first paste your code into Microsoft Word, now if you're using different editors, you can experiment and try similar sorts of tricks. I think that if I show hidden characters, why this might work is because of the different kind of line endings. But anyway, let's select that. You may experiment, you may want to not get that last end of line. And so now I'm going to paste it in. But I want to show you that I've actually customized using this customized quick access toolbar. So that one, I think, is paste and keep source formatting. That's what happens if you get the line break wrong. It's not consistent. I don't understand why, but so I'm using shift and left arrow. So now I'm not getting that last character. This is fiddly, but once you get used to it, you'll get into a stride and get into a pattern, and it will be quite quick. And I definitely recommend when you find your workflow, write it down and save the notes. So let's try that. Hooray. Okay, now we've got to get rid of this annoying bullet point. And maybe I could, with more time, if I was going to keep on using this style, I might create a new layout so I can easily create a new slide that's ready to paste in. Right, so now we've done some of the first bits that Jens recommended, and yeah, it looks like code. But I want to be able to tell people about particular areas of interest. And one easy way to do that is, because we've pasted it in as text, getting good quality images, and we can just do the highlighting. And I won't select more examples here, but you get the idea. So that works, and this is actually how I did my very first C++ talk. Did the highlighting for it, and then I used a laser pointer to point at the different highlights, and I failed there. So it doesn't work having multiple highlights on one slide. So the next logical thing to do is to say, all right, well, I'll create 3 copies of the code. I've done this in the interest of time saving. So if you look at this number at the bottom, I'm on slide 5, and then slide 6, and then slide 7. I did that for a while and it worked quite well, but you can't rely on your slide numbers to judge your progress through the talk. You can't say I'm halfway through the time, I'm halfway through the page, the slides, because it's probably not proportional. And I've also fallen for the fact that if you discover a typo in a comment or a string or something in a slide that's got 6 highlights, you've got to go and fix it 6 times and you're bound to miss one. So that's kind of annoying. So that's kind of like level 2. It's nice for the audience, but we can do better. So I'm going to focus on what I ended up using and settling on. It's a bit fiddly to explain, but at the end, I'm going to show you how you don't have to memorize the steps. You only have to do this once and then you can recycle. So I want to get the details recorded in a talk. And actually, when I started doing this in 2019, I did write down the notes and I had to go and find them in order to write this talk. I couldn't remember the details. So I'm happy that there's going to be a video of this. So, right, I'm going to go to insert and I'm going to insert a shape. You could do a rectangle, but I quite like the rounded corners. It's just a bit easier on the eyes. So I'll start by drawing my first highlight. And of course it's solid, so that's no use to anybody. I would be, if I'm not doing a demo, I'd be using all the keyboard shortcuts. So I'm going to say shape options and fill the shape, and let's make it a pale-ish yellow. And I'm going to make it semi-opaque, partly because I want to be able to see the text underneath and whilst I'm building up the animations, and partly because it ends up just looking better. So that's not too bad, but I really like having a slightly different coloured border around the end. So maybe I might choose a darker yellow. It's not critical for this, but you want it to be consistent, so choose something you like. Now I've created that, I don't want to be having to repeat those steps, so I will experiment with different keyboard shortcuts and find that on a Mac in PowerPoint, if I hold down the Control key and click and drag something, I get a copy of it. So that's good. If I hold down the Shift key, it keeps and move it vertically, it keeps the left alignment. And let's, undo another copy. So obviously I'm not going to waste your time perfecting the alignment, but just to give you the sort of idea. So now I've got the bits that I want to highlight. And as an aside, I think it's worth saying this might seem like quite a lot of work, but once you've got it set up, it actually turns out to be a brilliant reminder of things that you intend to talk about, because you don't have to remember which of the 3 lines or the 4 lines I want to talk about. You go through your highlights and you say, very calmly, very confidently, explain the line. So it's kind of like your auto cue. And I found that really useful if I pick up a talk and repeat it sometime later. Obviously, if we start the slide there, that is not interesting. So the animations are our friend, and in particular, the animation pane. So what we're going to do is select one rectangle at a time. And this is slow because it's doing some kind of preview, and I'm sure there's a way to turn that off. But anyway, so there we go. So we've got 4 things appearing. So we're going to be spending a lot of time testing what this looks like. Okay, the first thing is I actually really want that first highlight to be shown as soon as I go into the slide. So instead of making this one appear, I'm going to make it disappear. So I start and then I click. Oh, that did not work. I've done this so many times before. I selected it via the object here and then said disappear. And you see how we've got another animation. So let's delete that. What I actually want to do is select the animation there and change it to disappear. This is why you want to be able to visualize the animation steps. This pane on the right is really important. So now let's test it. Great, hooray. But there's a horrible gap. What can we do about that? Well, if I click on one of these and expand, I never memorize the order of these things. They're really non-obvious, I think. But this second one, we don't want it to be on the next click. We want it to appear with the previous one. And so now, rather than 1, 2, 3, 4, we've got 1, 1, 2, 3. So let's see what this looks like. First one is visible. Next click. Okay, hooray, we've got that right. But we carry on. I want to get rid of that using namespace thing. Okay, so the trick for that is to select all of the middle rectangles. So not the first and not the last. And I'm going to say after animation, hide on next click. And I'm very intentionally not doing that on the last one, and I'll show you why. So let's start the slideshow again. Yes, yep, yep, yep. Now, the reason I'm not hiding the last one on click is because at this point, I just want to go on to the next slide. So that is the mildly tedious, but really quite effective way in PowerPoint of achieving a series of animations like this. Now, Hendrik mentioned Obsidian in an earlier talk, and actually my last technical talk I did, I used Obsidian to generate the slides, and its advanced slides plugin. You can just paste code in, and with a little comment you can say I want to highlight lines 1, then 2 to 3, then 5, then 7, and it just does it all for you. So pick your tool and get to know how to use it. Now, there's one more thing I want to do, and then I'm done with this slide. And that is that the text is washed out because it's in front of my code. And I've done that deliberately because it's easy to select things and move them around. But once I'm happy with it, then I'll click on the border for the box that's got the code and say send all the way to back. No, that's wrong. Send all the way to front. Okay, and now we haven't got the wishy-washy. So that's it. If we had more time, I'd run through the steps a second time, but you'll be able to watch it on the video later. Now, a little bit of a tip. You really don't want to be doing all of that for every single slide. You're going to make mistakes, and it's really easy to get the animation steps wrong. So what I have at the end of my slide decks when I'm preparing them is a slide like this right at the end. And let's say that the most number of highlights I want is 7. I doubt I'd ever use that many. But here I've got the animation set up, and I've named all of the rectangles so I can see the order. So let's say I want to quickly highlight 4 things in this slide. Go back to here. I'll click outside of the slide, so I'm not risking dragging stuff. So I want 4. So I'm going to select the first 3 and then Command and click, or I think Control and click on a PC. I've got 4 things selected, and copy those, go to the next slide, paste them in, and then start moving them around. Now, I'm not going to align them up. It's not going to be worth your time, but just to demonstrate 1, 2, 3, 4, and on to the next slide. So all the time I'm looking for time-saving ways so that I can, as Andrei said, get the slides done and then focus on practicing. One last thing to mention in terms of tips. You can, in PowerPoint, customize the icons, the actions that are across the top of the screen. And there's a whole load of things like paste with source formatting and stuff like that that I don't use all the time, and they're buried in sub-menus or sub-menus or whatever. And if I find I'm using something quite a lot, then I'll click on this 3 dots and select Customize Quick Access Toolbar. And you have access to all of the commands in the program there. So they're grayed out from the screenshot, but this one here was paste with source formatting. And that is how you get to have better code samples in your programming talks. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Claire. And Andrei already had his turn. Thank you again. And now we will see Chandler Carruth. Let me bring him on stage. And we're ready.
Thank you so much, Jens. So we saw a nice lightning talk about having good code samples and slides, and we saw a live demo of how to actually build those slides. Now it's time to have a live demo about live demos. I like meta, and so I figured this would be a fun way to do this. So here we're gonna kind of go through and do a little bit of a live demo. So what are we actually talking about? What are live demos even good for doing? So the first thing that I think about with a live demo is it's really good for zooming in on some topic, right? This is a way to engage the audience, right? Something you can show practical, real tools that you want people to use. It's really great for showing very specific code or specific details of something that's fairly complex. It's good at focusing on how, much more than why. And that means that there's also something that live demos are not really good at, and this is kind of zooming out, right? You don't want to try and step back or really get to the bigger picture with the live demo. Kind of, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't engage the audience very well. It's hard to get people to focus on what or especially why you're saying something when you're doing a live demo. They're reading the demo, right? And so if you want to kind of, highlight your perspective or focus on an interpretation, a live demo doesn't tend to be the best thing. All right, so let's look at how we actually want to do a live demo. First thing you have to do is you have to plan every single step. This is hard to do, but it's really, really, really important, right? How do you actually get into the live demo? How do you move from one step to the next step? How does everything work while you're doing this? You want a good plan from the beginning. Another thing to think about is how do you wrap up the live demo and go back to your slides? This is super, super important. If you have a live demo that you're mixing into the rest of a talk. And if you, I'm curious, everybody should think about how many pages of notes they think I prepared in order to be able to do, you know, a 7-minute lightning talk on this. I think it's going to be kind of interesting to see, and we'll actually look at the notes I have later. If you have your plan, what are the kind of key components of making your live demo a success? The first thing to think about is you've got to work within the projector and the audience view. You can't be trying to make the projector, the audience, look at your live demo the way you would while you're working at a desk with a big monitor. You have to go the other direction, right? Put yourself into the shoes of having a low resolution, terrible projector with bad lighting, right? And so I've zoomed all the way in, and this is actually the view that I'm looking at, right? I'm looking at the same thing you're seeing here. And it's important that you kind of learn how to work in that environment and feel comfortable working in that environment. You also have to learn the tools you're going to be presenting. You've got to know them really, really well, much better than you need to actually just use them day to day. And you got to know how to make them work for the demo. If you're going to use Visual Studio Code or an IDE, you need to be able to just jump right into it, pull things up, move around, right? If you want to show a preview, you have to know where it's going to come up. When it doesn't fit easily on the screen, you got to know how to fix that, how to rearrange everything so that you get the view that you want to show the audience, right? I'm a big fan of virtual desktops for live demo. It lets you kind of move between different tools in a way that's pretty smooth. You always have the same layout, the exact thing you're expecting each time you look at it. You want to find this tooling workflow that's going to be effective when you're demoing it live. Next is you have to make this feel real to the audience, right? You don't want to do something that's just going to oversimplify it, right? It's tempting to oversimplify it. You know, in slide code, you don't have to make it compile, but when you're actually doing a live demo, you need stuff to compile. You need it to work with the real tools, and that's really hard. And so, you know, actually use stuff here. And so I'm actually using, I have my editor set up. It does automatic formatting of my markdown here. You want to try and make it real so that people actually see how things work. The next thing is that you do want to make this live in the moment. So you'll see me make mistakes here, right? And that's fine. It's good to actually have some mistakes that you have to correct live, right? And then people can kind of see that, no, this is actually real. It's actually happening live, and it keeps them engaged. Other thing is to never, ever stop talking. And this is, I think, the hardest thing about a live demo. It's especially hard when you're going to actually talk about something that you're not currently typing. And when you're trying to do this, it's very hard to keep it in your head what you're trying to say and what you're trying to type. And you'll notice a technique I'm using here, which is I'm alternating. And so I'll type a word and I'll say a word, and I'll type a word and I'll say a word. It's really hard for your brain to handle text in 2 different streams. And so have a plan for how to do that and how to make it through it. This is also one of the weird times when things like and hesitations, that's actually fine when you're live demoing, because what you want to do is keep the audience engaged while you have time to make it through your live demo. Next, make it fast and comfortable. One thing you'll notice is that I move fast in a live demo. I move really, really fast. And that's because people can easily get bogged down in the live demo. And so you've got to rush just a little bit. But of course, you can't go too fast or it'll lose people. It's a hard balance to strike. And so I don't have a perfect advice here, but it's something you've just got to do. All right. Next up, okay, I said to plan, scratch all of that. It's not actually about planning. It's about practice. I mean, you need some plans, maybe not without a plan. You can do a great live demo with a minimal plan, but you have to practice, right? You have to make it comfortable and fast. And you don't move this, like a lot of people have talked to me after a live demo and they're like, how do you type that fast? By typing the same thing over and over and over again. I don't normally type this fast, but you got to practice it until you're comfortable and you're fast and you can keep the audience moving. And you have to practice things going wrong. And so you don't get locked into this rigid script. So let things go wrong, mess up intentionally, accidents happen, that's fine. You want to kind of get that full experience when you're practicing. All right. The last thing is you've got to cheat. Sometimes you're going to be feeling like, I forgot what I'm supposed to type. That's fine. Just have something prepared ahead of time, right? Just pull out a prepared selection of things really fast. This is not a big deal, right? People actually are fine with it. They know things are going to go wrong. The key for you as the presenter is to just roll with it, right? Have those canned bits catch back up. You can even use a pre-filled framework, kind of like what I'm using here, to move yourself through each step of what you want to present. Things do go wrong. Last but not least, you should really be honest and provide your source. This is actually one of my big mistakes that I've made in a lot of talks, is that I don't always kind of upload the source, provide people access to it. This hurts two things, both the credibility. It's really hard for people to believe live demo if they can't reproduce it, but it also hurts accessibility. Like it's nice that I have decent contrast and a big font, but even better is to actually have a Git repository that people can go and check out and correct whatever they've misread. I understand, like, uploading can be hard. This is actually my problem, is that, you know, if you work for a company and you have to like sort out licenses or something, but I really encourage everyone, try to do this. I'm actually going to try and get this uploaded on my GitHub page, just so that I actually have done this yet, but I couldn't get it ready before the talk. But try and actually provide a link to things. It's so helpful if you're doing a live demo to then kind of show all of the inputs so that people can see them. And so with that, I do want to just show you what kind of notes went into the planning for this, right? And so these are all of the notes that I was taking to myself in my initial run through, trying to plan out every step of what I want to do, okay? Hundreds of lines of notes went into a 7-8 minute talk. And so with that, I've done a live demo, and I hope this helps you all do your next live demo, because I think it's a really fun way to engage audiences.
Thank you, Chandler. That was awesome. And yeah, great demonstration. Now we know how to live demo. Which brings me to Patricia. Let's bring her slides online. There we are.
Hi. So this is very meta. And it has to be for this type of format, because we're talking about talking. So I have a very small point, but to make it, I kind of had to do what I'm trying to tell you to do. So the difference between having a point and telling a story. So you have something that you want to say, but you have to convey it to the audience in some way. And this can be very difficult. So I have 3 examples from talks that I've done, and I'll try to deconstruct the technique that I used in each one. So the first one we're going to look at is a talk I did a few years ago. And here I'm using a metaphor to create the language that I'm going to use in the talk. So the talk is called Trying to Learn C#. It's a very weird talk, because I didn't know C# when I submitted the talk, so I had to learn C# to do the talk, and so I talk about that process. It's a very strange thing. It was an extremely hard talk to do for me, and in it I used words from learning a natural language. So I went and I found, how do we talk about learning languages in general, like learning natural languages? And then I used those kinds of words to describe learning C#. And so I'll show you some examples from that talk. So there's a word in Norwegian called frokost. And there's also a word in Danish called frokost, but said with a Danish accent. And in Norwegian, it means breakfast. And in Danish, it means lunch, which makes it extremely confusing all the time. Basically, either way you go, you don't know what meal you're talking about. And it's clear. And what really hurts it is that it is very clear from the context that you're talking about a meal, but it's very easy to get confused about which meal we're actually discussing at this point. And this is because it's kind of coming from the same kind of language background, but the meaning of it has drifted. And this can mean that you think you understand what the person is saying, but it actually means something totally different than you think. And this happens in programming languages as well. So I'll show you 2 examples. So here we have list in Java. And in Java, it's called list, but there's also a thing in C# called list. Unfortunately, in Java, this is some kind of abstract thing. It could actually mean some kind of linked list. And in C#, this is what we would call a vector, or what you in Java would call an array list, right? Which is confusing when you read it the first time because you don't know what it is. What is a list? Like, what is the underlying implementation? So here we have like a drifting meaning. It means different things in different languages, and you have to figure out what does it mean in this context. And here it is the same word because it came from the same place, but it doesn't mean the same thing. And you kind of have to figure that out in learning a programming language. And so you had one that was fun, is that they have something that they call namespaces. So in my talk, I have this little thing in the corner, and that is like the language I was thinking of when I was learning this thing in C#. So how did I try to understand it? So here's an example from C#, where they have something that kind of looks like a namespace, right? But it's actually not like a namespace at all. And so now I have to figure out what it actually means. And so this is all I'm going to show you from this talk. It's on YouTube. But the point is here, I used the metaphor of learning a natural language and mapped it to learning a programming language. Okay, so then I have a different talk that I did recently at Aku. And here I tried to illustrate time by using popular culture. And so the talk was called Classic Vulnerabilities. And I used popular culture because I wanted to remind people how long ago something was. And so I wanted to, oh yeah, I remember that song. Or, you know, so to give people a feel for how long ago something was, because that was a big point in the talk to illustrate that a lot of time has passed since something. So I had these 2 ecosystems that I was talking about. So you had systems programming and binary exploitation, and then I had these timelines. And so you know, we're going back to 2000 and then all the way up to 2022. But this is very abstract. Like people have 22 years. Okay, I don't know. So then I go like, okay, so boomers, you know, 2000, that was Y2K. And for Zoomers, Taylor Swift was 11, which makes everybody feel old. But anyway, and then I had this weird transition. And the transition was because it's old school. Like, okay, I tried many transitions here to make it like old school. One of them was like the cube rotating. I couldn't do it. It was too hard. But this is from a screenshot from the song Dilemma, which Nelly did with Kelly Rowland, who was from Destiny's Child, who Zoomers don't know who is. But it has this wonderful like scene in it. So if you were, you know, a teenager or adultish at the time, you might remember that she is writing a text message in an Excel spreadsheet on her fabulous Nokia phone. And this is something that people who were, you know, in techish things might remember from that time. And they go like, whoa, that's a long time ago. This was way before the iPhone. So then you get a feeling for when was 2002, right? Then I have another talk, and here I wanted to change people's minds about something, and to do that, I needed to put them in a frame of mind where they had, or what I was trying to do at least, put them in a frame of mind where they remembered, or they like experienced internally a certain situation, and then I would flip it on them. So this talk is called Deconstructing Privilege. And the first 2 slides I'm going to show you are the first 2 slides that I show in that talk. And what I'm trying to do in those slides is evoke memories in each person in the audience of their own experience, and then show them how the same situation could be experienced totally differently by somebody else. So the first one is going to the hairdresser. And so I asked people to try to remember last time they went to the hairdresser, how they experienced it, how sometimes they might be nervous. They don't know how this is going to look in the end. Can they kind of maintain this hairstyle? Things like that. And then I say, for some people, going to the hairdresser can be very traumatic. And then I bring up, okay, so imagine that you are transgender, and you go to the hairdresser as a child, and you are presenting as something that it's not you. So let's say that you were assigned female at birth, and you're coming in, and people all want to do the long hair and the everything, and all you want to do is be yourself, and you just want to cut it all off. So that's one experience that could be very hard for people to be forced to go into that situation and reaffirm something they feel is totally wrong for them. But at the same time, also, you have, especially for trans men, you've had several situations where trans men have been assaulted by the hairdresser because people think that they are going there and trying to cheat the hairdresser because haircuts for men are cheaper than haircuts for women. So both of these situations have caused many trans people to cut each other's hair because they don't want to go into that situation, because for them it is very scary and traumatic. And so this is trying to contrast, how do you, as a cis person or a cis presenting kind of person or passing person, how do you experience a quite ordinary situation, and then contrast that to how it is experienced by somebody else in a different situation. Another example that I have then is planning a vacation, where I ask the audience to imagine, you know, what you think about when you plan a vacation. Like, do you like to go to the beach, or do you travel to a place that has interesting food, or things like that? And then I flip it on them and I say, okay, imagine that you are in a same-sex relationship. Lots of places in the world, it's actually illegal for you to go. They can put you in jail for just traveling with your spouse. And suddenly whole sections of the world are not possible for you to travel to, not for a vacation, and not for business either. And so what I'm trying to tell you here is that the difference between having a point and having a point is you have an idea, you have something you want to say, you have something you want to communicate. But there's a difference between having a point and telling a story. And the difference there is trying to figure out, how do I tell you what I'm trying to say? And that means I need you to understand me, to understand what I'm trying to say, to get it, to internalize it in your own mind. And that is the struggle I have every time. Like, what is the thing? Like, I have the stuff I want to say, but I also have to have some kind of medium. And that medium is trying to reach the audience. And you kind of have to, and sometimes it's really hard, and it's super, super stressful, because sometimes I just can't get it until, like, I've been working on the talk. I'll have all of the slides, I have everything, but I'm just missing that one thing to, like, it bothers me, and I can get like, oh my God, what if I never get there? But the point is that you are trying to communicate to people. And so it's not enough to just talk, because language is just putting words into the air. You need to make sure it is parsed on the other end. You can't just, like, push it into the air. So this is basically the entire point of my entire thing. The difference between having a point and telling a story is trying to figure out how to tell you what I'm trying to say. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Patricia. That was very interesting. And we go to Kate. Let me bring on her slides. And there we go. Right.
Thank you. You know, I had occasion to be reminded yesterday, because NDC TechTown posted a sizzle video to get people to attend NDC TechTown, where I will be speaking again this year. And they posted a clip from me that I only speak at places where I would like to attend the talks. And I've been taking notes. These are great talks, and great big picture talks. I'm super happy. I'm going to talk about one tiny, tiny little thing. But I think it's an important thing, and I'll tell you why I think it's important. And it's about ending your talk. You know, as I said, I go to a lot of talks. I like going to talks, and I'm enjoying them. They're fantastic. You know, someone has got diagrams and explanations of something. This is why rotate is great. Or they have code, and they're zipping along. They're talking about the future, stuff that's going to happen, and then they bump into this slide and they stop talking. Or even worse, they bump into this slide. I've seen this on more than one occasion. This isn't better, right? And what happens when this slide comes up is the speaker kind of stops talking. And then sometimes they seem like it really caught them by surprise. They were in a great mood. They were cranking along. Everything was fine. And then up comes the slide that says questions or the whatever. And they go, well, I guess that's all I have. That seems to be it. And like the audience doesn't get their cue to clap. A couple people, you know, kind of try it, but other people don't pick it up because the speaker's still talking and saying, oh, I seem to have time for a few questions. And so people are like, I guess we'll clap when the questions are over. And it's like, who wrote this deck? You wrote this deck on purpose. You should know this deck. And you should have an ending that is not just, well, I don't seem to have any more content to say to you. A couple of people have alluded to these moments that you get in a talk. You can't count on them, but there are these moments. So one of them is the opening. There's probably another whole talk about how to start a talk. A lot of people do it badly. I like to start with the conclusion. This isn't a scientific paper where we're going to lay out all the evidence and then on the very last slide we're going to reveal the exciting conclusion. I like to actually start with the conclusion, but somehow you've got to get their attention to pay mind to what you are saying for the next however many minutes you're going to do it. And so you deliberately structure a great moment in there. And Patricia just gave us a reprise of a really life-changing talk for a lot of people, where she opened with these questions. Have you ever? And wow, that got people's attention. That got people thinking about the problem. A strong opening is amazing. If you are lucky, if the stars align, you may get a moment during a talk. Sean famously, you know, this is a rotate. And the first time he said it, he said, this is obviously a rotate. And it was so not obvious to me that I literally looked around the room at the other people with me to make sure that I was not the only one who didn't think that was obviously a rotate at all. At Meeting C++, I had a series of bullets on a slide, and the last bullet spoke to me so much that I repeated it on a slide of its own. And when I did, I saw all the phones come up to take a picture. Is it important to your ego that you're good at a complicated language? You may have an amazing code example. You may have this really brilliant point that people are going to share on Twitter, that people are going to talk to that one sentence out of your talk over and over. You can't be sure you will have a moment like that in your talk. You can try, but you can't be sure. Even in a great talk, there might not be one. But you get your closing, right? You're guaranteed your closing. So you want to structure that closing to be one of those moments. And the most important thing about that is to end on purpose. To not just trail off, to not just say, well, I guess I'm going to stop talking now. To have a deliberate ending. I believe that every talk should have a call to action. You don't have to label it call to action. It's not wrong if you do, but lately I've been putting what do I want you to do at the top of the slide. You know, if you've written a great library and you're coming to give a talk about my library is a great library, then your call to action is probably use my library. It's great. But it could be join the team to help maintain this library. You know what it is, right? Or if you've discovered a lovely technique like Claire's code highlighting technique, then the call to action is, hey, you should highlight your code, make your code easier to read on slides, and I've shown you how to do it. Sometimes someone, especially if the talk has like disaster or fiasco or whatever in the title, their call to action is the opposite. They want you to stop doing something. And like, you don't need to hide this. This is the point. This is why you came to talk for 5 minutes or 15 minutes or 60 or 90 minutes, so that people would start doing a thing. So take some time and figure out what that is that you want. But then you should also have a closing sentence. You're going to signal that you're done. And there's several parts to this. One is your actual sentence, which I'll talk about in a minute. But there's also a particular inflection, a particular rhythm of your words that says, I've reached the end of the sentence, I've reached the end of the paragraph, I've reached the end of the chapter, you know? And they all lived happily ever after. That rhythm, we recognize it immediately. It's a little more pauses between the words and a little kind of down drop. Everybody knows that's the end thing. So after you say your closing sentence, you pause for a couple of beats, and then you say, thank you. Believe me, they will applaud. That is, everybody knows the cue. There's a script. When you do that and then you say, thank you, they all go, yay. Even if you weren't really that good, they're still going to do that, okay, for sure, because they now know they're done. Now you can put the resources up behind you, or you can put the questions up, you know, slide, Q&A, whatever, something like that for them to look at while you're answering questions, because you don't necessarily want to be sitting on your call to action slide. Don't read it out. Don't say, so I have a blog, it's here, and you can see that I'm sometimes on Twitter and da-da-da. Just leave it there. Maybe say, here's some resources that you might find helpful. But let's come back to that closing sentence. And that is why everybody should, whatever it is you think everybody should. So please join me in doing something or another more often, or no longer doing something, or whatever, you know, you want them to do something. So please join me in doing that, right? So you see, you really can, whatever it is. But one of my tricks, which is working pretty well for me, is to have a talk that has a title that the title itself makes a good closing sentence. Then what I can do when I get to the end is I can press home, and we'll go back to the screen where the title is in great big letters, along with my contact information, and everyone will know we're done. And that, my friends, is how you end a talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Yeah, thanks everyone. And yeah, so thank you everyone. That's been really great. We actually now like right on point to get started with the panel. And so we're gonna go over to Hubilo and go there into the room. There will be also already a red dot. And yeah, thank everyone that has been part today about this lightning talks, speaking about C++. Thank you.
Thank you, Jens. This has been my first lightning talk. Thank you.